It seems Blizzard handed us loss after loss this week, but let's throw some copium on it and take a second look. Hey, it's Soul, and this is Warcraft Weekly, the show that will not feature me on camera today. I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'm going to do this weekly as more of a podcast thing. I'm going to talk a little bit slower, and I'll point out if I want you to look at something on screen. Otherwise, let me know what you think about me lowering the tempo a little bit with this format. But of course, please hit the like button, subscribe for more WoW coverage, catch me live when I'm streaming, and let's start with the almost universally good news we got this week. A lot of folks have complained about profaned tinderboxes. It's a rare reagent used in lots of recipes for blacksmithing and enchanting and maybe a few others. By contrast, other reagents in the same class of rarity are a lot more plentiful and thus, cheaper. In a recent fix, the blacksmithing supply vendor in Dornogal now trades 3 of those more plentiful items into one tinderbox, as you can see here on screen. It's been a few days since this change, and the results are pretty much as expected, where profane tinderbox prices, they've plummeted overall, and there's a new economic relationship. Overall, the cost of related goods that use tinderboxes are trending down. The others are going a bit up, and they're going to continue to feel useful throughout the whole expansion. Also, long-term, this trading is going to start cutting away at the supply of the cheaper goods, and the prices might fluctuate a bit, especially when a new season rolls around. Some of you might have noticed these Nerubar finery items dropping this week in the raid, and I'll explain what I've learned and how to eventually get a stacking buff to help you progress through this Season 1 raid. There's a turning quest just inside the Nerubar raid. It's not the kind of quest you pick up, it's the kind you just kind of turn in once you have the items you need. One finery will drop off each boss regardless of difficulty, meaning you can clear Raid Finder to get 8 of these this week, but you can't farm the same boss over and over again, even across difficulties. Finery is also an account level currency, so you can only collect up to the cap, which again is 8, no matter what character you use. So in short, you just clear the raid somehow, some way, for the finery, and if this is done across multiple characters, you can use the transfer UI to consolidate them all into one person, and yeah, that's what you want to do. Next week, we can expect to do the same, where we farm up 8 finery, then we can complete our first turn-in for a 3% increase to our damage and healing. This buff is shared account-wide, and just like the Catalyst and Sparks, just playing through, regular play will let us stack this buff every 2 weeks. It's pretty passive, but I guess it's not too passive just like a blanket region-wide buff would be. There's supposed to be catch-ups in place, but I don't think we'll learn exactly how that works until at least next week. Maybe we'll be able to kill the same bosses after all, maybe more currency will drop, or maybe it'll be found from weekly quests if we're behind or something. Mythic Plus World is getting some much needed relief, with gilded crests dropping from +8 keys instead of +9s. Now, teams will still need to deal with the Challenger's Peril effects with the increased death penalty. With this change, it sends a bit of a message okay, yeah, it's okay, the difficulty to reward tuning, that's off, but they don't want to risk too massive of a change to the overall difficulty, at least not at this stage of the season. Along with these changes, buffs from the Xal'atath affixes are being increased to 30 seconds up from 20, which I'd like to think is pretty significant for throughput. And for the big pushers, Xal'atath's Guile, which is that flat health and damage buff, that's being nerfed down to a 10% increase rather than 20. And I think this is an effort to make that transition from handling the Xal'atath affixes and getting the kind of kiss curse thing to dungeons feeling like heroic plus. They want that transition to be a bit smoother. The other message Blizzard is sending so far, at least to me, is that they want the stuff you get from high-level keys versus mythic raids to be closer in difficulty, so to speak. There's long been this criticism that keys felt required for higher level raiding because getting high-level crests or myth gear, it was just easier to do than mythic raids or even the last bosses of some heroic raids. Now, for years, I'd regularly hear complaints that raiding felt unfulfilling because it was really easy to gear from keys instead. Maybe we would outgear the raid and drops would feel less exciting, and this sounds familiar, right? We're hearing a similar conversation about delves, where the so-called easy champion and hero gear, well, that invalidates lower level keys and raids, and now it feels required to do. If that's taken away, of course, people will get mad as well. The difference with delves, though, is it's not an organized group experience at all, not if you don't want it to be. Alright, let's talk up some of this week's outcry, starting with some quality of life balances, aka nerfs. Starting this week, people who used to fill their delve vault with Zekvir kills can no longer do so. It no longer counts at all towards credit. Now, it sucks for people who are looking for a quick fill, but yeah, I get it too. In the history of the Great Vault, I don't remember being able to fill out the vault in, like half an hour to an hour? I was surprised Zekvir counted in the first place, and I think it'd be a decent compromise if at the very least Zekvir counted towards one of these clears. It's one of the growing pains of introducing solo content into the vault, which was traditionally multiplayer stuff, and Blizzard really should have seen this coming. With the change or the fix or whatever, it does preserve the original intent of Zekvir to be a goal for players at certain levels to eventually reach, and then flex when conquering it, but not be something that feels like something that you gotta farm all the time for progression. Of course, it's also another instance of, quote, fun detected, I'm the type who doesn't like their routine being changed up from under me, I get it, but I ran delves for brand XP and currency anyway, so I never farmed Zekvir in the first place like that. And people who were gearing their alts, okay, yeah, they lost the cheesy path, and now they're just gonna have to settle for running the full solo delves, or getting warbound gear, and crafting, and crest discounts, and maybe it's because I still remember well. I remember the era of going weeks without gear dropping, and the earlier ideas of little upgrades through artifact power, and hopeful upgrades through Warforged and Titanforging. Like, by comparison, all that stuff sucked, and what we have right now is great, and yes, we are losing something, but did we really? I don't know. Moving on, let's talk about this Timewalking badge nerf, where the weekly award has been cut in half. The event quest will still give 500 badges for the first completion that you do per week, but only 200 for additional completions on alts. The raid version of the quest will give 500 and then 300 of the Timewalking badge things for alts. Now, this is counterbalanced by the fact that badges can be traded across the account, making it pretty easy to target a super favorite thing from the vendor and then just throw alts at it. Not to mention the people who've collected a ton of this over the years. People got pretty pissed at the change, but I can't help but think that, this is one of those monkey's paw moments. That's a saying where you wish for something and you get what you wish for, but there are consequences that you might not like. I remember a while back before the War Within announcement, and there was all this outcry for account-wide, everything. Hey, Blizz, give us account-wide rep, or let us transfer currencies however we like, and so on and so forth. And at the time, I was pretty sure of two things. That one, eventually we'd get it in some form barring technical limits, and two, that there would be consequences. Yeah, actually I remember when I said this, it was when we found out about the Time Rift quest for rep back in 10.1 or 10.15 or something, that we would find out it would be completable only once per week across the entire account. I was like, dude, this is a sign of things to come, so watch out, gamers. Don't be surprised if something like reputation was, shared across the account, but we'd also only earn it once across the account too. Watch out for them alt armies, they might get nerfed. So here we are today, and yes, rep is shared across the account, but, so are the opportunities to earn that rep. It's nice that I can get on different alts and do different activities and still get the rep that I want, but I can't just hard farm, I mean, it'd be pretty nuts to empower our alt armies and rep up super fast, and it'd be exacerbated by using multiple accounts, which early on was a bug and considered an exploit. I think it's reasonable to say that to a certain extent the so-called proper way to play the game should not be, hey, let's just throw a bunch of alts and do it. And from a different angle, the likes of Timewalking, it's an evergreen system with a long history. We know it comes back. So if there's no time because you're busy with work, okay, cool, just slam it next time, but that doesn't jive with everyone. This is one of the more interesting contradictions in video games, where we have this kind of completionist crowd with takes that are opposite of the evergreen content crowd sometimes. The people who are like, hey, the world needs to feel relevant and stay relevant, and while this might not be exactly what they're asking for, having a feature with a long tail like this is one way of doing it. Problem is, we get people looking at this from the angle of, so I should be able to 100% this the first time it comes through, right? And then there's the trading post, which does introduce brand new stuff every month, and it is impossible to get everything. So it's nice, kind of, to have all these different activities for goodies, but my question is there a correct answer, or is there the most ideal approach to rewards that the game should shift towards? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Which brings me to the anniversary event, aka Timewalking Deluxe, made more so that this is the 20th anniversary for World of Warcraft. There was a lengthy blog post where Blizzard tried to state very clearly their intent with the most sought-after prizes, these Tier 2 ensembles. Yeah, there's a lot of them, and at first glance, they're very expensive. I'll read directly from the post here on screen. For the anniversary event, we want these epic new rewards to feel both special to players and well-earned. To that end, we've worked to create a rewarding system that should help players earn their first Tier 2 sets in the first 2 or 3 weeks, depending on their playstyle. We know there are a lot of people who are excited to learn more sets, if not all of them. To accommodate this, we have both discounts and increased abilities to earn currency that kick in after those early weeks. This should allow players who play through the event regularly to have the ability to earn all 13 of these sets, and many, if not all, the other new cosmetic rewards tied to the anniversary. If you run out of time this year, don't worry, we will have the sets available from the anniversary event in future years. So, the truly dedicated will have an opportunity to get everything by completing this, this whole battery of activities and earning those bronze celebration tokens that we earn throughout the event, or maybe I should just call this a patch because this will be going on for something like 8 weeks. The currency can be traded across the warband, but credit is also shared. So, like I was mentioning before, the army of alts, it's not going to help the way that some would want it to, at least not right away. But aside from the patch activities here, there's a lot of overlap. Many of these tokens will be earned from us just doing our usual things with, there's like an extra raid and dungeon, there's like some world bosses each week. There's another achievement that, at least from the reading, it lets the entire warband participate in these activities shown here for even more tokens, and then I'll explain on top of that how there are discounts for these ensembles. In these kinds of subjects, I think of collectors. Collection-motivated players, they're kind of on a spectrum where at one end, there's like the very casual, hey, what's up? I'm going to show up, going for a few things here and there that I really want, and that's about it. But on the other end, the extreme end, is the super completionist who feels compelled to collect everything in the first go, otherwise they failed, or the feature wasn't designed correctly. And of course, within that group, there's more than a few who'd much rather, blame the game than themselves. I try to acknowledge both camps, but I also make it clear that in my commentary, I tend to lean casual, whether it's endgame or, even in this case, with collections. Now, I do think it would be a cool gesture, a very cool thing if, for like these Tier 2 cosmetics, at the very start of the event, Blizzard just had something like a quest or an NPC walk up to you and be like, hey, here you go, you just get to choose one and get it for free, thanks for being a part of these 20 years, champion, and then you just get hooked up with one set of your choosing for preferably, probably your main class, and then you can run off and farm up tokens and do whatever. Now, I believe in evergreen systems, and Timewalking, and in this case the anniversary events, they've been a thing. And also, yes, if someone doesn't collect everything they want, they'll have to wait till next year, which sucks. But whenever I see someone say that line, it reads like this reductive critique, blind to everything else that'll come between anniversaries, like new patches and a bunch of trading posts and stuff on the shop and, another trading card mount thing as a Twitch drop and the other yearly holidays that we might have had to wait for, to get things that we missed. The World of Warcraft keeps spinning between all that waiting. And at any rate, this doesn't seem to be like a very difficult event to farm up. Because the first big ensemble set, it cost like 60 of these tokens, and Blizzard said it would take 2 to 3 weeks to get, but after that purchase, our second ensemble is only going to cost 40 tokens after a discount achievement is activated. What's cool is that we'll activate another discount after our second purchase too, meaning our third ensemble, and after that, it's only going to cost 20 of these tokens each. If we pretend the average player, and I know using the word average is very dangerous to use, but if we pretend the average player will want 4 of these ensembles for their favorite couple of classes or because they just look the best, it seems pretty reasonable to say that they'll be able to get these within 8 or so weeks of, their normal routine, plus the extra time to do specific holiday activities. I guess I'm doing, super copium classic Soul, okay? I'm trying to reassure folks that getting everything you want, it's almost a sure thing. You can get most, if not everything, in the first run or the first go. And if not, there's always next time. That's a fact. They said it themselves. So now it's up to us to decide if we're going to trust them at face value or be a cynic. Are we going to call this FOMO or a job? Are we going to take this are we going to take this first world problem, getting all the rewards in a video game? Are we going to call it that and let it rob us of joy, or are we not? And, there's no wrong answers to that, even if I framed it like it is, but there are consequences to how we want to look at this. That's the show, and let me know what you think of the format, including the almost failed voice. The intent is to go a little bit slower and make this, maybe an easier listen, but again, I just want to know what you think. Next week should be fun. It's the first War Within Dungeon event and the last week before the 11.0.5 patch, and there might be one small thing that I'll ask you to do in preparation for the patch. Let's give thanks to our friends over on Twitch and Patreon, and lots of love to you, viewer, for making it to the end. The algorithm appreciates you. Now, if you don't mind, please like this video, subscribe for more WoW coverage, catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.